Abraham Lincoln was born at Home on February 12, 1809. Home was a one-room log cabin, only 18 feet long. His father had built the cabin and cleared the land himself near Hodgenville, Kentucky. Lincoln's ancestors had come to Kentucky from Virginia, following the famous pioneer, Daniel Boone. Thomas Lincoln, Abraham's father, was a fun-loving man who was the best storyteller around. Abe's mother, Nancy, stressed the importance of education and sent Abe and his sister Sarah to a blab school, or one-room schoolhouse. They were called blab schools at the time because the students all spoke out loud, or blabbed, at the same time. The idea was that if the students were talking, they wouldn't be daydreaming. Early in Lincoln's life, the family was forced to move. Thomas Lincoln felt it was best for his family to live in a state that had already banned slavery. So when Abe was 8, his family moved to Indiana. 2 short years later, Abraham was faced with tragedy. His mother Nancy died of a common sickness called milk sickness. He was terribly upset by her passing. A year after his mother passed away, his father remarried Sarah Bush Johnston, who made sure that Abraham and his siblings were cared for and attended school for a few weeks each year. This wasn't enough for young Abe, though, as he often spent evenings reading by the fire. He read books such as Robinson Crusoe, Aesop's Fables, and Pilgrim's Progress. Work and more work. That was how Lincoln spent his teenage years. He earned the nickname the Rail Splitter because he spent so much of his extra time chopping wood into rails for fences so that he could make a small earning. Lincoln's strong work ethic was developed by working for his father, but as Lincoln grew older, his desire to see what was outside of Indiana took a hold of him. He and a friend began working for a ferry company located at the fork of Anderson Creek and the Ohio River. This sparked even more of a desire to spread his wings and see what else the world had to offer. Lincoln, along with his friend Allen Gentry, built a flatboat. His family experienced a second bout of milk sickness, so his father loaded up the family in a wagon attached to a single ox and headed 200 miles to their new home, Illinois. At the age of 23, he jumped headfirst into politics by announcing that he would run for a spot in the Illinois state legislature. His platform focused on the importance of education and local transportation systems, but in the middle of this campaign, Lincoln was compelled to enlist as a volunteer in the Illinois militia. At the time, war had broken out between the settlers of Illinois and the Sioux and Fox Native American tribes. In 1834, Lincoln was elected to his first term in the Illinois state legislature. He was quite a popular representative, and he was elected in 1836, 1838, and 1840. While he was serving in the legislature, Lincoln took the exam required to become a lawyer. Lincoln continued working as a circuit lawyer to support himself and his new wife, Mary Todd. For 2.5 months in a row during the spring and fall months, he'd ride horseback from one county courthouse to the next, completing a circuit of 15 courthouses. In 1847, Lincoln was elected to the United States Congress as a representative. In 1858, Lincoln decided to run for the United States Senate against Stephen A. Douglas, whose nickname was the Little Giant. You can imagine the difference in stature between Abraham Lincoln, who was 6'4", and Stephen A. Douglas, who was a mere 5'4". Although Lincoln ended up losing the race for state senator, the Lincoln-Douglas debates that occurred across Illinois' prairie towns gained historical significance due to their heated arguments for and against slavery. In 1860, with Lincoln's popularity growing, he set his sights on becoming president, and to many people's surprise, he won. Lincoln's first months as president were rocky because South Carolina seceded, or split from the Union. He lost his beloved son Willie and declared war in an attempt to keep the country united. The Civil War pitted the northern states, which were called the Union States, against the southern states, who became known as the Confederates. Lincoln served as president throughout the 4 terrible years of the Civil War, a war in which more than 600,000 soldiers, some of them boys between the ages of 12 and 16, were killed. The war left America with deep wounds for years to come. During the war, Lincoln delivered one of his most famous speeches, the Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address served as a dedication to the fallen soldiers at Gettysburg.
We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
On April 9, 1865, Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy finally surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant, bringing the Civil War to an end. The Union had been preserved, but much hostility was left. On April 14, 1865, just days after the end of the war, Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln went to see a comedy at nearby Ford's Theater. While watching the performance from a balcony, a Southern supporter named John Wilkes Booth snuck up behind Lincoln and his wife and shot him in the head. Booth fled the theater and chaos broke out. Abraham Lincoln died 9 hours later. How is Lincoln remembered today? Thousands of streets, schools, and towns have been named after the 16th president. As you know, Illinois is the land of Lincoln, and his face is on the penny, $5 bill, and Mount Rushmore. On a grander scale, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. was built to honor Lincoln's legacy. And in 2005, the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum was built in Springfield, Illinois, just across from his first law office, bringing Lincoln's life full circle.